So we'll start with making a motion to accept consent agenda items. Motion by Earl. Do we have a second? Second by Travis. Any discussion? All of those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0. Then we'll go to ask if there was anyone present who would like to speak on any items that are on the agenda or any other topics. No? I do want to remind everyone that we are live streaming the board meeting tonight, so we'll welcome those that are joining us online or those who catch the replay. So we'll start with, on the agenda items, old business, Neola approval. Nikki?
Asking for approval for the Neola policy for teacher appreciation grants. No changes from previous, and part of us getting approval for those grants annually. So asking for approval.
So moved.
I have a motion by Pat. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Tony. Any discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Next we go on to the finance.
Set the one presentation. This is the second reading of the regular budget, and there was no changes. There's only a couple of little changes I'm going to talk about. Next slide, please. The only change I made on this slide was the fact that we will be advertising on September 9th. It's no longer put in the paper, so to be consistent with what we've done in the past, I had 2 dates on there. We really just do it on the 9th because that's 2 weeks before the public hearing. So that will be done after, let's see, am I asking for permission? I forgot to ask that. Yes, I am asking permission to advertise though, when we get to the end of this.
Okay.
Next slide. No change in this either, but I do have one little note. We did the adjustment to fix ADM from what we're seeing the trend to be. And I also updated all of the SPED numbers, the honor graduate numbers and things like that. And those basically offset each other. So our ADM numbers dropping, but our other things brought it back up, so we're still sitting around the exact same numbers that you're seeing on here, about the $30,400,000. So no change there. Which then brings us to the next slide, which didn't change at all. We're still going to be advertising $500,000 in rainy day, $35 million in education, $15 million in operations, and $3.6 million in the debt service. And you can burn through the rest of these slides because nothing really changed last time. If you want 2 sets, just keep on going until we get down to keep going, and another one, and another one. We'll get there. Next slide, right there. This is basically a repeat of what I just said, but this is the last slide we always talk about. This is what will be in the advertisement. And with that, is there any questions on this, since there was really no changes? But do you have any questions from 2 weeks ago? Or need any clarification on anything? Oh, I guess I would like permission to advertise.
So based on this that was presented, do I have a motion to allow Philip to advertise the budget for 2023? Motion by Chelsea. Do I have a second? A second by Susan. Now, is there any discussion? No? Okay. Then all of those in favor, raise your hands. 7-0. Anything else with that, Philip?
Nope.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Seth.
So we'll move on to new business under programs. So we have a teacher evaluation tool that needs approved.
Yes, so we're asking for approval for the teacher evaluation tool this year. Erin Stoner, committee chair, is here, and I want to thank all the committee for their hard work on that. The teachers have voted on the use of this tool for this year, and it had a 97.8% passing rate. So I've asked Erin to briefly kind of share some of the highlights of what's different with the plan as opposed to previous years, and then I'll ask for approval.
Okay, as you flip through, obviously you'll see any changes are in yellow. Most of these changes are just really clarifying or providing, just making sure we're being as transparent as possible. You'll see on page 3 and then multiple other times throughout the document where it really defines that The idea in that professional domain, that the professional domain, which is where you get, we're just making sure you are behaving at the bare minimums of professionalism here, dressing, interacting with colleagues, that kind of thing, that it does not do anything to help, but if you are lacking in those basic areas, it can negatively reflect upon that score by 0.25, correct? So that change is highlighted a couple times in there just to make sure, like I said, everyone is aware of it. You'll also see there are some changes in there, just taking out language that are referred to old methodology that was used, particularly at the middle school, about standing when you answered a question and that kind of thing, which is it's not something that they follow anymore, so it was taken out. We also added in just a little bit more definition about the attendance, teacher attendance, which is on page 12, under core professionalism. In addition to that, so that any schools in our district who wish to go for STEM certification through the state, so that they have what they need through this document to be able to reach that certification, there we have provided no changes at the top portion in those domains, just further evidence that would allow for them to get what they need for STEM certification. So STEM things that would be evidence of those different domains.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. They worked very hard as a committee. We actually had people join the group this year. Typically, as a committee, we struggle to get plenty members on, and we had at least 5 new members. Yeah. And we didn't even offer different snacks or anything. It was just people wanted to join. So that was exciting. So asking for approval for the evaluation tool for this school year.
So I have a motion by Travis. Do we have a second? Second by Pat. Any discussion? No? Okay. Then all those in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0. Next, we have the assessment data presentation.
So I just want to share with the board our final assessment scores from last school year. These are now not embargoed any longer by the state for any portion. So I wanted to give a brief presentation tonight kind of on where our performance is at and what next steps we're taking as a corporation. So next slide, please. So statewide assessment results for iLearn saw slight increases of an average of 1 to 4%. This is across the state. In the state, subgroup performance continues to indicate significant and greater impacts for students in subgroup areas. So COVID and the pandemic, we know, affected certain cohorts of students who might have already been struggling, even greater than other peers. And then finally, across the state, you'll see a trend, and this is an interesting fact. This is true in elementary and secondary, that our kids are recovering in English language arts quicker than they're recovering in math. And you see that in both Jennings County and statewide data. Next slide. So I put this slide in there. This is from last year's beginning of the year when the state studied what impact COVID had on our kids. And they predicted at that time that it would take to reach pre-COVID levels more than 1 year for certain student groups. And one of those certain student groups is our free and reduced lunch, or our kids who are living possibly in poverty. And so that is still true, and we would be in the second year of that status. Next slide. Statewide summary, 41.2% of our kids statewide were at or above proficiency in ELA, and you see that difference that math is lagging slightly behind statewide with 39.4 at or above proficiency in math. Socioeconomic, that's one of those cohorts that we discussed, that it takes longer for recovery from COVID is what's predicted by research groups, and you can see that was true in statewide data this year. Students who received paid meals, potentially not living in poverty, their passing rates as compared to those who might be living in poverty. So what does it look like for us overall as a district? I pulled a graph. I really love some dashboards that 5-Star provides for us as being a partner. And one of those is showing the statewide average for all iLearn scores, 3rd through 8th, and then what our Jennings County average is. And you can see prior to the pandemic in 2019, we were scoring below state average, and our parallel path that we've taken on recovery and the last 2 years. We are showing a slightly greater rate of growth in ELA from last year to this year than was the state average, but we still are not meeting those same state average targets, so definitely an area we're looking at. In math, you can see that we had a greater impact during that COVID year from 2019 to 2020 than what was the state average, and our growth trend is not quite matching yet what we're seeing at the state level. So whereas math is a struggle for students statewide, that's definitely echoed for us. These are our actual proficiency scores per each building, and it is broken down by ELA and math, and then those two combined scores are the first category. So you can see our district average fell at 23.6%. That is actually the same district average of the prior year as well. Each individual score is then broken down by grade level. So on this graph in the left-hand column, you'll see what we scored in 2021 by grade level, what we scored in 2022 by grade level, and then I also added a column to show you where that state average is falling. Some of our grades showed growth from the same grade number, like third grade. You can see we were 29% in 21, but then we showed growth as a third grade on the whole in 2022. The more interesting data to look at, though, are keeping kids are apples to apples in groups. So the kids who were third graders in 2021 are the mostly same group of kids who are fourth graders in 2022. So that's another way to look at the data, whether we're growing in grade level standards year to year or whether cohorts of kids are improving. You'll see mostly in language arts, we did see cohorts of kids recovering stronger in ELA, which matches our overall data. Then we'll see on math in the next slide. An interesting data point for us as a district is our kids who were the youngest tested students during COVID saw the greatest impacts. So last year, our third and fourth graders, we saw the greatest impacts. This year, it's that same group of students who were fourth, fifth graders. So that's something we definitely have our eye on coming up for the next year, knowing that our current fifth and sixth graders had great levels of COVID impact compared somewhat to peers. Our third grade iLearn scores follow this same trajectory. We're about 2% different than we were last year's scores, and that's really dependent per building where our scores fell. We have buildings seeing great success with using science of reading strategies, and that is something that we're sharing data on internally and trying to make sure that we're recreating things that we know are working with kids for intervention, like our Barton Reading and Spelling program, with all of our students. That takes us to some secondary data. At the high school level, the statewide average in biology is 30%. Our 2021 scores were 15%, and we saw slight growth in 2022 at 17%. We are, of course, still working on those numbers and increasing where we are scoring and helping our kids be prepared. Biology is a tricky when they may take the course at different times during the year, and then they're tested typically for us at the end of the year in May. And this is a new one, so we don't have comparative data. For the first time ever, all of our juniors took SAT. And now, instead of ISTEP, that is the benchmark for high schools across the state. So our school scores on SAT match the kind of patterns we see with our elementary, which I thought was interesting, in that we scored much stronger in ELA and literacy than we did in math. Across the state, the average, you can see that bottom column, was about half of the kids in the state are meeting benchmark on SAT that are 11th graders. Our rate was at 43%, so we aren't at that average, but we're close to that. Math, across the state, about a third of the kids are meeting benchmark. For us, that rate was at 17%, and we have some that are in the approaching category. So this is data that the high school has just had for the first time ever using SAT. It is providing a lot more in-depth information to us than what ISTEP did previously. The high school's working into by department, meeting and looking at where our kids are scoring and what available interventions and programming we already have. Next slide. So what are our next steps after looking at our assessment data from 21 and 22? We've already started a lot of these steps. We definitely see room for growth. Our first target is to get state average, get all of our kids to state average, but then we would like to go past that and exceed it. We understand we have work to do. We are seeing positive recovery, but we are also looking at that data and finding where we can share successes of what we know is working with our kids. So a few steps that I wanted to outline that are important and we're working on right now. One, we have a larger than usual for Jennings County population of staff who are 4 years or less into teaching. So we've been putting a lot of efforts into making sure we've increased professional development opportunities available to staff, make sure that we have different types of professional development for our new teachers, and a robust mentoring program. So that's something we've been putting in place the last 2 years and is continued and enhanced this year. Next is our students who are in poverty. We're making sure that we're identifying students who are struggling across the board, but we're recognizing that research is telling us they may need extra support. So if we see that students or a particular group need help, we're providing plenty of opportunities. Like this summer where we tried our summer tutoring program. We've never tried that version of summer school for elementary. And we're collecting our data to see what kind of success rate that had and if it's something we want to continue offering to students and families. MTSS intervention across the district K through 8, we are seeing progress and growth. And when you look at the kids individually, the kids who are involved in our program for getting intervention, they are showing growth data. That's very encouraging that we're on the right path of helping kids in need. The next piece that we have is making sure when we find a highly successful program like Barton's, that we're providing it standardly across the board in all of our schools. Increased intervention supports in math are needed. Typically, historically, Title is strongly used as a support in mostly literacy in schools, but there is availability for it to be used to help support in math. So we're looking at making sure that as we're helping intervention for our kids in literacy, we're doing the same in math. We already mentioned grades 4 and 5 cohorts. We're keeping an eye on them and making sure they have plenty of support. And then the final one for K through 8 is the state has done something actually pretty fabulous. They've identified standards that are heavily needed for each grade to recover from COVID impacts, and they're providing a plethora of supports for schools and teachers to help do that. So for each individual standard, as a teacher, I can click on that standard and go to an entire library of resources available for me to teach that standard. And in our schools, every one of our buildings are diving into that data and looking at it together and getting access and learning about how to get to those supports. So we're excited about that program. And finally, at the high school, I know that they would echo me saying this. We want to say thank you to the board for approving through ESSER the positions to create even more MTSS programming. So when we identify that kids need support at the high school level, that we're right there to step in with intervention. They gave me data that even within the first week, they'd already had 150 kids access that program at the high school, and they're looking for those numbers just to grow. In addition to that, at the high school level, we're looking especially within math, because that's an SAT area, our focused professional development, make sure we're offering all opportunities available and have all of our staff members have access to resources they need to teach in the classroom. So those are some of the things that we're working on in response to our data to make sure that we're on a continuous path of improving.
Thank you, Nikki. Quick question. I've had conversations with others about the summer school and the programs that we had. When will that data be available where we could take a look at, how many attended, how many accessed, and what kind of outcomes we got from that?
I will be able to do a presentation at the 2nd September board meeting. So we have to have a summer school deadline report that will gather data, and then our fabulous instructional coaches took pre-data in May with kids who were going to participate in the tutoring program. They tracked the number of sessions the kids attended, and right now in August, their classroom teachers are gathering the post-data of how they performed after summer tutoring. So the 2nd meeting in September, we'll be able to share that information.
Perfect. Thank you. This was an inform item on the agenda. Does anyone else have any other questions for Nikki?
I guess I do have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a reason why the high school is not doesn't get any title funds, does not qualify as a title school?
So that could be an option for the high school. There's a couple steps to that. It does put some more requirements and parameters to how they offer programming if they choose to access that funding. That might impact programs that they already have. So that's why traditionally we've looked for other remediation money for them. The other thing to think about is it's one pie. And so when we put another, we're just gonna be dividing the pieces a little smaller for all the schools in the corporation if we add another piece of pie into that puzzle. And with the high school's population size, they would take a sizable chunk. So by adding them to title funding, we would be potentially removing some funding from the other buildings.
So, but it is optional for them to be
It
titled.
is, they would qualify based on their free reduced percentage.
I was just wondering if we could funnel some more dollars to support that math problem.
And we've had those conversations as recently as this week. Dustin and I kind of reviewed that data as well, because it's a year-long process to apply if they choose to do so.
Good question.
So whose decision is it the high school's decision to do that, or?
For the title funding,
Yeah.
well, it would be a multiple layer conversation. As title director, I would sit down and share budgeting numbers. Dr. Halleck and I would discuss what impacts that would have on other buildings. If we needed to do it as a long range plan, if it's going to have impacts on other buildings. We use a lot of our titles dollars to help for staffing, for people to be available in the buildings for intervention. So that would potentially have some impacts we need to plan ahead for.
You're really hopeful that your early intervention, by putting your dollars in early grades, will prevent from the need of having it one day at the high school.
And that's true, the high school reflecting scores on where the foundation was laid in elementary. High school is not totally responsible for those scores.
And currently, high schools have access to a lot of dollars because a lot of the focus of across the state is on preparing kids for college and careers and for career technical education. So we have ways to fund those programs that the elementaries wouldn't have access to. So we're looking into that long term.
They just kind of put some impossible obstacles there when they want all these kids to pass algebra or whatever is required for their core 40 or whatever requirement they have out there, and the kids don't have the foundation to do that, so they're kind of set up for failure, and I don't know how much we can prop them up. We need to fix it at the elementary.
Great conversation. Good. Any other discussion? No, then it looks like we have another inform item, school improvement plans.
And this one's just very short. It's that annual time of year, again, when all the schools have worked to update their school improvement plan. So those are available. They are digital format. If anyone on the board would like those in a printed copy, I do have those that I could share with you. So just informing that those are prepared, and I'd like to ask to bring them back for approval the next time. So it's just an inform that we're working on that.
So those are available to the board members electronically, but if you want a copy, a hard copy, close your ears.
It's like this
Nikki
big
can
of a
get you a hard copy. We want to review those so that we can vote on those at the next meeting. I'm sure you want a hard copy.
No, the binders look this big.
I'll pick that up after the meeting.
All right. Looks like we're down under professional staff and under recommendations.
Yeah, I have a couple. I'd like to recommend Ed Ertl for Jennings County High School counselor, a 2-year contract continuing through 6/30 of 2024. And then Karen Schneider, Jennings County Middle School teacher and athletic director for the elementary. I had inadvertently brought her days in as 12 at the last board meeting, and that was for a partial year. They should be 25 days for a full calendar year, so I'd like to make that recommendation as well.
So, I don't know if we need to take these separate, but I think we'll just take them separate, just to be sure. So let's start with, do we have a motion on Ed Ertl?
So moved.
I have Pat, second, Tony. Any discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. And then the second one, the recommendation is for Karen Schneider, the change in days from 12 to 25. Do I have a motion by Earl? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Pat. Any discussion?
I guess I just want to confirm that her original contract called for the 25 extra days.
Correct.
All right.
Any additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor? 7-0.
And Amy, I I need to do the STEM sponsors too.
Perfect, we'll go next page. Keep going, Shannon.
So, when to bring the STEM sponsors to you for approval, and we have them all listed there. Brush Creek would be Stephanie Puckett, Hayden Bailey Craddock, Graham Creek, Courtney Christjohn, Sand Creek, Danielle Wiley, NVE, Judy White, Scipio, Vi Davis, the middle school, Tara Kelly, and the high school, Charles Wolf, asking for approval for those.
Okay, I have a motion by Travis. Do I have a second? Second by Earl. Did you? I'm sorry. I'm going to say Susan. I thought you raised your hand, but Susan, I got Susan. So I have a motion by Travis. I have a second by Susan. Any discussion? No? All those in favor? 7-0. Now down under support staff. Shannon, you have recommendations.
Yes, recommending Teresa Brandt for the Jennings County High School cook position, Sally Emily for Sand Creek Parapro 29-hour position, Randy Hill Jr. for Jennings County Middle School 7th grade assistant football coach, Bridget Jagger for Sand Creek Elementary SPED paraprofessional, Penny Jones, Jennings County High School cook, Justin Kuntz, Jennings County High School main office student worker, Diana Marshall, Hayden Elementary cook, Stephanie Rayner, Sand Creek Elementary ESSER parapro, Holly Rose, Hayden Elementary paraprofessional, Catherine Safely, Jennings County Middle School cook, and she's moving to a Jennings County Middle School music paraprofessional. Teresa Short, Sand Creek Elementary paraprofessional, moving from full-time to part-time. Kennedy Vance, Scipio Elementary paraprofessional, Amanda Walk, Jennings County High School cook, and Connie Wilson moving from Scipio Parapro to Scipio Librarian, asking for approval.
So if it's okay with everybody, we'll take those as a group. So do I have a motion to accept those as read? Okay. Travis, motion by Travis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Pat. Any discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Down under students, we have an enrollment update.
So I wanted to update the board on enrollment for this school year. As of the first week of school, we were down 99 students to the previous year's beginning of school enrollment. We are currently, as of last Friday, we were at 3,877 students. We will say we updated the numbers a little ahead of this Friday because we were curious, and we have gained 19 more students since that number. So we are seeing an upward trend on enrollment. That does usually happen each year all the way up to October 1st. And so then in addition to that, with the potential loss of 99 students across the district, we really want to dig in on what those 99 students have left us to go to, where they're at. So we've asked each principal by September 15th to contact those families and those kids and find out where they have decided to enroll and what the reasoning is for that. Things that they experienced in Jennings County that they thought were wonderful, things they experienced in Jennings County schools that maybe they had some comments for improvement. But that's information we'd like to know. So the principals are contacting them individually. I already have 3 principals have their data back in. But if they can't reach them by phone, they are going to mail a letter. And I included in your board packet a sample of what that looks like, that survey we're sending for exit data for K-8, and then the one that we're looking at for 9th through 12th graders. So that's information by mid-September that we'll be able to discuss and have back.
This was an informed item. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I think that's an excellent strategy. I looked at your forms, I thought they were excellent.
I have to give kudos to Susie Webster and Dustin Roller for developing those and being willing to help out with that.
Problem solving, you have a loss of enrollment, and you're looking to solve the problem.
I also agree. I think that's fantastic. I would like to encourage you to try to figure out if there's a way that maybe these surveys or that touch point could be via text. This generation is just very connected to phones, whether it be students or parents. A lot of people, what I find even when I'm looking at interviewing and hiring people, even in healthcare, is they will not answer a telephone, but they will respond immediately to a text. So anything that we can do to make sure that we're reaching out and getting this feedback would be ideal. And you have a great IT department. I'm sure that there would be an opportunity for them to offer suggestions. But it's just it's very interesting. You'll call to set up an interview and they won't answer. but if you text them, man, they're right on it. So it's just the way it is.
We have students leave during the year, like moving. If we can catch them in the guidance office when they're pulling out on, hey, give us a couple minutes. Why are you leaving? And really find out then.
Mr. Roller's developed a plan for that this year. He's gonna personally talk to each kid who's
Good.
withdrawing. And then if they do choose to withdraw, part of that exit form is helping them create a plan for what they're going to do after they're out of school, if we're unable to convince them or help them with staying enrolled.
Right, thanks.
Any additional discussion? Okay, down to finance. Philip.
Asking approval on quite a few donations here, so hopefully I don't butcher this too bad. Campbell Township Volunteer Fire Department, $1,000 to Brush Creek for student snacks. The Masonic Lodge, $219, $500 to Brush Creek for student snacks. Barcons, $150 value in playground balls for the Brush Creek School. Coffee Creek Christian Church, $250 to Graham Creek for student needs. Weston Baptist Church, $500 to Graham Creek for student needs. Decatur Plastics, $500 to Sand Creek for student needs. Ebbing Auto Parts and Fresh Prints shelving for the Jennings County High School supply shop. Modern Woodman, $700 in snacks to the Jennings County Schools. Beasley Family Dentistry, 2 totes of school supplies to the Jennings County Schools. Lowe's, $100 to Jennings County High School for the school supply shop. And the 2022-2023 Mission Hope Food Drive program, Jackson County Bank, $500, Dennis and Sheila Cockrell, $225, Christ Baptist Church, $200, Simcoe, $225, Grayford Road Church of God, $225, Helix Poly, donating bags, Warren Hall, $225, the Eye Care Group, $500, and Expert Eye Care, $225. Asking for approval.
I got a motion by Tony. Do I have a second? Second by Pat. Any discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Quite the list. It's fantastic. So next on the list, I have capital projects finance plan presentation.
Seth, if you could pull that one up, please. Thank you. This is the first presentation of this. Next slide, please. Schedule for that is there'll be a second presentation on the 8th with the request to advertise. We will advertise on the 9th, and then the public hearing will be set for the 22nd and adoption on the 6th. And again, this is like the other one. You're advertising on Gateway, and we'll put it on our school website, so it is no longer required to be in the newspaper. Next slide, please. Basically, what we've got here is the 2023-2025 capital assets. This is items that we're buying, like potentially buying a IT vehicle, or we're having to get a zero-turn mower. It's a 3-year window, and I'm just trying to anticipate working with Roy on where the vehicles stand, and it's about $332,000. Last year, this was $508 because we had 3 buses on that window, but we're looking, I have 1 bus on this list just in case something happens. We won't be looking at a lot more buses for a while from that standpoint because we're currently setting. So we'll probably add more buses next year for the next 3-year window. For 2023 capital projects coming in around 1.4, 2024's 2.0, and 2025, 7.8. You see a pretty good sized jump there, bigger than what we've had in the past also. And that is because Roy has worked the last month or so trying to look at the really bigger picture 10-year plan. And with that, we went ahead and threw items on here that have the potential to be needed in the next 3 years. So that's why the 2025 project looks so tall and looks quite a big jump there. But it's things that there's a variety of things between safety items and HVAC seems to dominate the list when you look at those type of items. That's gonna be your heavy hitters within that. Is there any questions on the capital? And this is a report basically that has to be filled out with the state, filed with the state, so when we turn around and actually have to spend some of this, you guys have already looked at the detail of it and looked at what's on there, so when it comes up, it's not a surprise.
So this was an item for inform, so just our information. Does anybody have any questions for Philip? No? Okay. We'll move down to food and service meal prices.
Asking for approval for meal prices for the school year. These are the same numbers that they were. We kept the prices the same as they were pre-COVID. This year, the universal provision, federal government grant that gave free breakfast and lunch has expired. So we are back to all of our policies and procedures that were in place prior to COVID. Worked hard to not change that price for families of what we were paying prior to COVID. So the student breakfast price would be $1.50 for paid lunch, 30 cents for reduced, and then there's free, of course. Lunch would be $2.75 and 40 cents for reduced. So asking for approval for those prices.
Motion.
Motion by Earl. Do we have a second? Second by Chelsea. Any discussion?
Just a comment, to stay like, you have there in this inflation is remarkable, so thank you.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Moving on to operations, we have a food service student program update.
Yeah, so Stacy Green is here to offer an update on how this is working for our students. We have made a committed priority to providing food for all of our students, whether they have a negative lunch balance or not. They'll receive a free a full reimbursable meal at breakfast and lunch. So how we're gonna make that work and be able to offer that, Stacy's gonna share information.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. As Nikki said, free meals have expired for the school year, as you know. And thank you for approving the meal prices as they were. We know it's a hardship for everyone, so we'll try to make it work. With that being said, is re-implementation of the meal policy. And these are things stated in the meal policy, but I just wanted to share with you again how we're going to implement that. And you have these, I think, in your information as well. So all K through 12 students will receive a full reimbursable meal if they do not have money in hand. And that's a full reimbursable breakfast and or lunch. They won't receive a separate meal or a different meal. It's the same meal all the kids get, and it's the reimbursable meal. As always, they can't charge a la carte items. After that, if they don't have money in their account, it's going to be an IOU or a charge. We will then contact the parents through a daily text message. Is currently sent to the parent or guardian for each student who owes meals, and also a text through Skyward. So it's an email and or a text every day. It's daily, and that's already been implemented and in place. K through 6, after the second week of school, which we've already done, IOU letter notifications go home in the student newsletters, and the teacher writes a negative balance from the list from the school secretaries. The school secretary will give it to the teacher that she'll put in the student information, the newsletters that go home with the students in their folders. Grades K through 12, notification letter 1, 2, and 3 is sent via email, and the parent or guardian notification through the Skyward portal. So it's sent via email as well as through the portal, and you have those copies as well. Currently, after 10 student days, any student who owes $10 or more, a phone call to the parent from the school secretary, just to make it a little lighter, and it's informational that they do owe $10 or more. Currently, any student who then owes $25 or more, a phone call to the parent from either the secretary and or the principal. Those schools know their parents the best, on whether or not that is a secretary phone call, maybe the parent just forgot, or maybe it needs to be from the principal because of the amount now owed, or just they know their parents best. Per IDOE, as I mentioned, no student or all adult a la carte purchases are permitted. That's your chips and your drinks and your extras and things like that. So that won't be permitted. And per IDOE, no adult meal charges are permitted. So we ask our adults not to charge their meals. So any questions? Yes.
So if a child has got a negative balance of $25 where the parents seem to be struggling to pay, is the window open for them to apply for free or reduced?
Absolutely, yes. That is available all school year long. We have sent multiple applications out, and we will continue to do so. So with those newsletters that are sent home with those students, an application with a letter is in there. And also if they need assistance, because we do have some non-English speaking households, they can reach out and we will get that to them in Spanish. We do have Spanish applications as well, and we can get other verbiage and other for that. But anyway, yes, we will get applications to them and help them as well.
Do you have a general, what's our free lunch percentage running as a corporation? Do you have any idea?
We don't get that number till September because August isn't finished yet, but I would imagine it's around the same, around 55, 50, yeah, high 50%, so.
And our principals, when they reach out to individuals, if they would qualify for the application but maybe want help filling it out, we do invite them to come in the building and we assist people personally if they just need help getting that filled out.
Thank you, Nikki. Yes.
I have a question. If I were a parent and I was reading some of the information on there, and maybe I read it wrong, but why is milk 50 cents and then a whole meal is 30 cents? Did I misread that?
No, so a reimbursable meal, the milk comes with the meals.
Okay.
So if they want an extra meal, say it's a lunchbox student or whatever, it's considered an a la carte purchase. So it's an a la carte pricing per calculation from the IDOE. So we pay around 25, 28 cents for a carton of milk, and with that calculation, it comes out close to 50. But we encourage, if they do want a milk, we encourage a full reimbursable meal, so we try to encourage.
I didn't remember in the past they had problems maybe with getting parents maybe to fill out the free lunch, free reduced lunch. Is that still a problem getting people to do that or not?
I don't know, with being pretty new. We're just here to help them if they want help and
Right.
phone call,
Right.
any phone calls, anything they want. I'll meet them at a school even myself and a computer lab and try and help them out. So they have a lot of avenues of help. So we're there, the school's there. So yeah, we want to make sure we help them. Thank you. Anyone else? No, and I do want to thank you for all you do. It shows and it's nice. It's a nice place to work. I like it here. So thank you for all you do.
We're glad you're here, first of all.
Thank you.
And thank you for the work that you do. And I think, again, with us live streaming, I know there's not very many people in the room, but with us live streaming, if anyone has a question or needs help, obviously Stacy is willing to sit down and be of assistance, as would anyone within the corporation.
Absolutely, yes. That's what we are here for, to help them and get them assistance as needed. So thank you.
Thank you. So moving on, we'll talk about bus replacement plan presentation. This is an Inform. Philip?
Yes, thank you, Seth. Next page. The calendar for this is identical to the capital one. We're going to be, first one's tonight, second one will be on the 8th. Request permission on the 8th, and then we'll advertise the 9th, have the public hearing on the 22nd, with the adoption on October 6th. Next page, please. To get these numbers, me and Tim sat down. We've got a list of all the buses that are there, the age of them, and our schedule to replace. And what we've done here is we're trying to keep it at around $250,000. That's what we budgeted the last few years. So we've currently going to be paying off 4 of our buses in 2023. So you'll see the numbers slightly change in 2024 because we'll be taking on 5 more buses on a 5-year plan there. And then in 2026, our buses that we just bought last year will be coming off, and we will be picking up 5 more buses on a 5-year plan with those. Now, this is slightly different than the bus that's mentioned in the capital presentation. That's more of a situation where we've got a hardship, or we've got, maybe somebody gives up a route, we just have to buy a bus. This is our normal replacement based on the long-term maintenance schedule, and it is another state-required form that just wants you to make sure you're looking at your stuff to make sure it's in good running order. And any questions on that? This meeting?
No questions? All
Thank you,
right.
Seth.
Perfect, thank you, Philip. Looks like we are at the end of our agenda.
Can I, 2 notes?
You can.
I got some from a reliable source that on our meeting that we had on our work session, a lot of people did a lot of extra. And it's you know, when people do more and work Saturday and Sunday, Phil and Nikki, a lot of meetings, and Dustin, thank you. It showed. We had a lot of stuff to look after, and thanks for doing the extra.
We did all that in 2 weeks for you.
Yeah.
We had a couple of meetings and everybody took their assignment, and it's amazing, like the high school principal, for example. We said, we need a survey. How do we know what children would participate? I can have it for you in 3 days. Philip says I can have a budget in 2-3 days. But you know, they worked weekends to do it. So I think it's really important you know that everybody's working above and beyond duty, and they're filling the gap of not having a real superintendent. You know, I'm just here to facilitate and guide. So, you know, they pick it up a lot of extra work, and so thank you for saying so.
We'll carry the water for you there. And on a very sad note, we had a student shot in Whiteland today, standing at the bus stop. They made an arrest. He died, is that right?
No, soon died.
So I'm just.
And they haven't announced who they arrested yet.
I'm just so sorry that it's part of our world. I'm just so. But prayers to the family.
Anything else that needs to be brought before the board tonight? If nothing, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Pat, do we have a second? Second by Travis, all those in favor?